Basically, my brother-in-law, my husband's brother, passed away from cancer 2 weeks ago. His widow/wife, aka sister-in-law, has never really been on good terms with my in-laws, her in-laws. They had issues in the past, and now my mother-in-law is planning to go to court for grandparents' rights to get visitation of the kids. My in-laws had been asking my sister-in-law to give them my brother-in-law's wedding ring so they could keep it. She refused and they got into a huge argument. She left with the kids, so they went to her home yesterday, hoping to take the ring from her, but she told them that she didn't have it and she had buried it with my brother-in-law. When my parents-in-law mentioned this and were devastated, I suggested that she might just be lying to get them to drop it. Suddenly they got up, quickly got into their cars, went to her house, and had another huge argument. Sister-in-law called me later cussing at me, saying I was horrible to be meddling in her life and encouraging my in-laws to come after her and harass her. I argued that I only made a suggestion and that her real issue was with them. She told me to mind my own business and to stop getting involved. My husband scolded me for what I said and said that his parents were crazy and that I shouldn't approve of their behavior or even help them harass my grieving sister-in-law. I mean, my parents-in-law are also grieving, and I too am grieving, and my sister-in-law's words hurt me when all I did was just make a suggestion when I saw how devastated my parents-in-law were. But maybe I shouldn't have said what I said and caused my parents-in-law to go after my sister-in-law for the ring again. Am I the idiot? Edit. My sister-in-law and I aren't close. She seemed to resent me for some reason, even before this situation occurred. Why did his parents want to take their son's wedding ring away from his widow, who gave it to him when they got married? This poor woman barely buried her husband 2 weeks ago, and these vultures of a family are already going after her for grandparents' rights? And OP thinks it's okay because they don't get along? Oh, hey, you lost your husband and the father of your children, and you're grieving, and now having to face being a single mom and learn to navigate life alone, but give me his ring and give me your children. Gee, for the life of me, I just can't see why not. OP seems as delightful as 10 angry-off skunks in a locked bathroom. You're grieving? What in the what? You participated in the harassment of a grieving widow, but it's okay because you're also grieving. So the grieving widow should be more considerate of you? That's really what you're going with? You are the idiot. Leave the poor woman alone. And maybe be mindful that if anything were to happen to your husband, this is the same crazy you'll be subjected to. I hope the sister-in-law packs up late one night and runs as far away as she can from them. Heck, I wish we knew who the sister-in-law was. Let's start a GoFundMe for her so she can start a new life away from these idiots. Or get her one heck of an attorney to fight these idiots. OP's husband sounds like the only person in the family with decency and basic social skills. Agreed. I can't imagine why the widow has historically had issues with OP and the in-laws. It doesn't sound like any of them could understand a boundary if given a dictionary with the appropriate entry circled, highlighted, and bookmarked. What a bunch of idiots. Wonder if the mysterious dislike for OP is because the deceased told the wife early on what an awful busybody OP, his brother, married. My brother died 6 years ago. He left behind a wife and 2 daughters. My brother and his wife never had the best marriage, and she was never close to my family. We adored the girls, though, and spent a lot of time with them and my brother when he was alive. After my brother died, we ended up in court to see my nieces because their mom was shacked up with someone days after the funeral, and she decided if we wanted to see them, we needed to take his kid too. I was granted access to the girls and have never passed on this time. She ended up married to another guy within 11 months of my brother's death, with 2 of his kids, and she has 2 kids with him. Her family and his family are not involved in their shared kids' lives. Because of this, the kids have latched on to my family. We do not want to be in their lives, though, so we focus on the girls and try to be kind to the other kids, but not lead them on. Their mom keeps letting them come and acting like we're equally responsible for her other kids. Once she even said that since she didn't divorce my brother, they're his stepkids, and so part of our family. The girls have talked about how weird life is because they're discouraged from talking about their dad at home. They're told they could see their mom's husband as their dad. They're even told they should advocate for their siblings to be included. But neither of them likes that their mom remarried in the way she did, and neither likes her husband. They've expressed jealousy of his other kids, who have no contact with him and don't have to be a part of that household. So the older half-siblings have a birthday party soon, and when I went to pick up the girls, he came out and asked why I wouldn't be at his birthday party, and I told him he should ask his mom to explain. She came out and he asked her, which is when she told him that I needed to be invited. So he turns around and asked me to come. I told him I couldn't make it. He asked why, so I said his mom would need to tell him. I didn't want to drag this out with the kids, so I left with the girls quickly. One was held back by her stepdad, but was coming out as all this happened by my car. I got several messages after, saying I was the idiot for making her answer for my cruelty. I think it would have been worse for me to say anything, but I want others to judge. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. The kids aren't yours and they aren't your brothers. If they continue trying to force the situation, have your lawyer send a cease and desist. The kids might be innocent, but the parents should not raise them because you're their family. She might also start thinking that she can drop the kids off at your house for babysitting, etc., if you don't put your foot down. By saying the sister-in-law, mom will explain it, you're letting her control the narrative. You shouldn't play this game. Simply explain that you are related to his half-siblings through their dead father, which means that you're their aunt but not his. Explain it straightforwardly so that the kid stops being batted back and forth like an emotional shuttlecock between you and his mother. His mother's an idiot. She's setting the kids for heartbreak. My youngest daughter is a senior in high school. One of her best friends, Lily, had just turned 18 as the school year was starting, and her parents kicked her out of the house that same day. My daughter told me she was sleeping on different friends' couches and talking about dropping out to work a job. So my family took her in so that she could finish school. I just can't imagine a parent kicking their kid out like that. So after we did that, my daughter and Lily decided to have a community barbecue/bake sale to fundraise some money to cover food and housing expenses. It wasn't something I ever asked for, but the girls wanted to do something to contribute to groceries and bills. The girls made flyers and little promos for social media, and they were pretty straightforward about what was going on. They said community barbecue/fundraiser for Lily, and a note from Lily saying, "As you may know, my parents kicked me out of the house and cut off any financial support on my 18th birthday, leaving me homeless with no money or car. The Smiths gave me a home, expecting nothing in return, except that I stay in school and graduate. So I wanted to do something to give back and pay my own way." Anyway, I shared that on social media, and so did the girls and many of their friends at school. The barbecue was a huge success. Almost all of our neighbors, many kids from my daughter's school, and many family and friends came by. The girls raised several $1,000s, which I put in an education fund for Lily, where I'm also putting stuff like the cash she gives me from her job for groceries and stuff like that. I'm planning on surprising her with it closer to graduation. Anyway, Lily's parents are furious. They saw that I posted the flyer on the community Facebook page, and most everyone in town saw it. So I got a call from her dad screaming into the phone at me for slandering their family online, which I felt was such BS. I told him to either buck up and act like a parent ought to, or lose my number. He started yelling on the phone again, so I hung up and blocked his number. Then I got a bunch of calls from another number. It was Lily's mom getting angry at me about how I don't know what she and her husband have been through, and it was trashy of me to be begging the whole town for money for myself and acting like it was their fault. I was like, well, it was your fault. And she got angry and said that she and her husband had given their daughter everything, and she was ungrateful, which I feel is BS because they aren't even giving her a roof over her head. Am I the idiot for letting my daughter and her friend, who was kicked out at 18, host a fundraiser that was very blunt, that it was to raise money after her family kicked her out? Not the idiot. They're just annoyed that they've been called out on their crappy behavior, and now everyone knows about their crappy parenting. They're ashamed and angry that they've been exposed, but they're blaming you instead of reflecting on their own issues. They're not even giving any reason, not a good reason, not a crappy reason, not even a lame excuse to try to cover their own butts. I'd bet good money it's because they know any of the actual reasons why they kicked her out are garbage, and they can't be bothered to come up with a decent lie. They're angry because they know they're in the wrong. They have no excuse. And now the whole neighborhood knows, and they have nothing to say for themselves. Imagine kicking your high schooler out of the house and then getting upset at people trying to help her out. They're probably angry they can't get their hands on the fundraiser money. They sound like parents who think their daughter owes them something since they gave her life, even though she didn't ask to be born. Infuriating. If you're in the USA, CPS should have been called. While she is legally an adult at 18, typically, if the 18-year-old is still in high school because they were born earlier in the time frame, the parents are responsible for this person. Not the idiot OP. Apparently, the rest of the town thinks what you did was fine too. Proud of you for helping out your daughter's friend so generously. My brother Ron and sister-in-law Jen have spoiled their daughter Alice rotten since she was a newborn. Since Alice was a toddler, everyone in the families told Ron and Jen that they need to teach Alice boundaries, but they insist that they're the ones in charge of Alice. I often babysit Alice when she was young. I would tell Ron and Jen that Alice was not behaving, and they would respond by shaming me for not getting Alice exactly what she wanted, or pushing her so hard because I told her to pick up the toy she threw on the floor. Note, Alice was 7 when this happened. Eventually, I refused to babysit Alice, and they insist that I'm being a bad aunt because I was expecting so many adult things from a baby. Ron and Jen did all of Alice's homework and class projects for her. They frantically called me one night because the math tutor canceled and Alice's homework had a pre-calculus question that they weren't sure how to do the work for. I sent them the work for it that one time, but after that, I would refuse to. Alice is now 17 and completely out of control. She screams, curses, and flips off her parents until she gets her own way. She's unlicensed and dented Ron's car several times when stealing it for joyrides. She has stolen both Ron's and Jen's wallets for shopping sprees. They've caught Alice partying, drinking, vaping, and sneaking out to boys' houses. She's gotten even worse since her junior year. Ron and Jen still do her projects or pay others to do them, but the material now is too specific for Ron and Jen to understand without class notes, which Alice isn't taking for them. Alice didn't pass her junior year, and she's angry because now all her friends are doing senior projects that she can't join in on. Ron and Jen called me the other night to tell me how exhausted they were because Alice was illegally driving again, and they had to beg an officer not to send Alice to juvie. They talked about how wild all teens are, and they're not sure where their sweet little girl went. I thought that last part was a joke, and a laugh slipped out before I could stop myself. Ron got angry and asked what I thought was funny. I apologized for laughing, but I responded that Alice's behavior sounded about right because they did expect Alice to just magically become responsible and well-behaved when they've always rewarded her bad behavior. Ron and Jen started to yell at me, but I hung up. Many of my friends and family members said Ron and Jen are only angry because they didn't like hearing the truth. But most of the family saying I have no idea how hard it is to be a parent, much less have a child like Alice. And even though the laugh slipped, I was cruel to respond to Ron and Jen that way, knowing how exhausted they are. Now I'm conflicted about it, if I was being an idiot to my exhausted brother and sister-in-law. Not the idiot. Why would you lie to family to make them feel better about their mistakes? Until they're willing to admit their mistake, they'll just have a bad child. And yes, parenting is indeed hard, but yet most people seem to manage not to raise kids with zero respect, who are literal criminals. That's because overly wet lettuce rots the fastest. They expect to be coddled the way that they coddled their child. Rejecting reality is apparently a family value there. OP, your brother never instilled a sense of fear of consequences in his daughter. They have nobody to blame but themselves. I hope your niece will overcome that handicap. A child like Alice is short-term for parents refusing to accept responsibility for their own parenting. Parenting is hard, but the consequences for doing a bad job are off the charts. So you need to just suck it up and do it right. You're not your child's best friend. You're their parents. Your child does not exist to validate you or correct your fallen dreams. They are a whole unique individual who will lead their own adult life one day, separate from you. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. You just need to be good enough. as in good enough not to create an absolute nightmare. I, 29 female, was hosting a party for my mom and stepdad's wedding anniversary, so I flew out my 3 step-siblings and their partners to spend the week in my city, and then we would have the party on the weekend. I and my husband live in a pretty small flat, so there weren't enough rooms for everyone to stay, so we offered for my stepbrother Mark and his partner Fran to stay on our yacht for the week. No one in our family likes Fran because she's a militant social justice warrior and can't keep her opinions to herself, and she's always no general etiquette. So the week went on with Fran making out-of-pocket comments about our city and lifestyle, which was expected but still annoying. One night my husband and I were attending a party, and I didn't fancy inviting Fran and Mark, but we did, and surprisingly, everything was fine. We didn't see them for most of the evening. We invited a few people back to our yacht for an after-party, and of course Mark and Fran were there. Unfortunately, Fran was quite intoxicated and started again making inappropriate comments that made people feel awkward. One of our friends was telling a story about how he did something funny that incurred a fine. Fran got upset and said how the fine he'd paid was more than most people make in a year, and he should be ashamed to be happy to throw that much money around. She said she was sad to see the amount of money being spent in our city and how ungrateful and wasteful we all are. Cue awkward silence. I jokingly said that the next time Fran should take herself camping because I didn't spend the money to fly her out here, treat her to dinners and parties and yachts for her to be sad, and everyone laughed and moved on. Eventually everyone left and we went to bed. The following day, I told Mark and Fran that I was humiliated and horrified by her behavior. I wouldn't have people disrespect me while staying on my property. Of course, they were still welcome to come to the party, and the flights home were taken care of, but they couldn't stay on the yacht until the party. I probably would have relented if there had been more genuine remorse from them, but Fran doubled down on her attitude, and I'd had it. After a brief argument, they left and went to stay in a hotel. The party went off without a hitch. We were all keeping the peace for our parents' sake. A few days after they'd gone home, they sent me a bill for their hotel stay, saying that since I'd kicked them off the yacht, I should pay for their expenses. So I sent them a response telling them where they could put their bill. This made the rounds, and my parents are now asking that I pay the bill, as it was a lot of money for them and not for me. And they came on holiday with the expectation that they wouldn't have to budget for accommodation. I said they wouldn't have had to if they'd had an ounce of decency, and that I won't be paying, but my parents are begging me to, so that it doesn't impact Mark and Fran financially. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Well, you invited them and accommodated them with the expectation that you wouldn't be inconvenienced or humiliated by their disrespectful, sanctimonious behavior. So they should just learn to live with their disappointment just as you do with yours. Agree. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. OP paid for an entire trip, and Fran wanted to criticize them for it while still reaping the benefits. This isn't about rich versus poor. I get why people can get upset with those living lavishly. It is about benefiting from someone's kindness and showing no tact, grace, or respect. You are the idiot. You've got some tells here, including using the term social justice warrior. I've never heard anyone say that who went on to be a decent person. You come across as classist and arrogant, and your dismissal of something your friend did that earned a fine equal to many people's annual income as funny? Yeah, given that you wrote this story and are inclined to paint yourself in the best light possible, and you come across as revoltingly intolerable, I'd say you're a giant idiot. I don't even care if your sister-in-law was rude at this point.